This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
Welcome back, everybody. It's amazing the different types of therapy out there to help move our lives forward, have realizations, and so much more. And she's opened my eyes up to art therapy, encourages us to be creative, and sometimes things come out of that creativity. We are going to do something different today. We've been looking at other pieces of artwork from other individuals. As I'm understanding it, we're going to look at our own today and see what that reveals about us, our personality, but also the process of essentially how art therapy works. She's our professional of the year. So great to have Barbara Robertson back on the program. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm always glad to be here because I get so much energy myself about out of just talking about what I find so rich about looking at artwork, feeling what comes up,
Hmm.
just experiencing it in a different way than language would afford us.
So in the past, we've looked at others' artwork, and let me just put the disclaimer in here. We're not looking at potentially artists in the past. This is just people just expressing themselves. Everybody is an artist, and we both agree on that. That is it, it is true. You know, anybody says, I can't draw, I can't paint. Yes, you can. You have creativity. We all have it in us. But we never knew exactly what these people were thinking or feeling. We just kind of assumed, you know, the way things look, or maybe you knew a little bit of a story of their lives, and then maybe the art that came from that. But we'll never know. Looking at our own today, we knew where we were at it at that point in our lives. We knew what we were thinking and all of that. So I find this kind of interesting where you could say something and I could say, Barbara, that's not what I was thinking. This is what came from that, and vice versa.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. Because I mean, that is one of the cool things about art is we each bring our own stories to what we see.
Hmm.
And so it can mean one thing to the person who created it and something entirely different to the person who's viewing it. And that's, I think, a part of what makes art such a rich experience.
Shall we?
Let's. Okay.
Hmm.
So I've got a little PowerPoint here. As you've probably heard Steve mentioned, if you've listened to one of these podcasts before, that Steve has done comic strip art as a way of doing therapy, not
Yeah.
knowing it was therapy. And at the same time, the drawing that I'm going to share a little bit later, I had no idea there was such a thing as art therapy. I was newly graduated from art school and kind of just trying to make art on my own and, squeeze in some creativity around a job and all that good stuff. And so it's going to be kind of interesting to just look at what we've got going here.
Hmm.
So let me get the slideshow up. Oh, first, I have this quote that I
Hmm.
ran across just today. It's from a guy named Darius Bashar, who is sort of a creativity guru out there in the land of ether. And I listen to him quite a bit and learn a great deal from him. And this just popped up on a chat today. And what he says is the artist's greatest superpower isn't creation, it's translation.
Hmm.
We're not making something from nothing. We're converting invisible energies into visible forms, turning maybe pain into beauty, chaos into order. And then his challenge question is what untranslated energy is waiting for your unique language? So, Steve and I each have a unique language, as do every one of you, if you're listening or watching. And this is kind of the introductory panel to Steve's comic strip called Wellington, which I assume is the name. Oh, there it is. Wellington is the main character. Let me see if I can get this actual slideshow started.
And just so everybody knows, um, I started drawing this when I was in high school, and I started drawing cartoons when I guess I was like 8. My mother used to say I would draw on the walls when I was 2, and it was around age 22-ish, around there. I had been reaching out to syndicates, and back in the day, that they would distribute comic strips and cartoons to newspapers. I had one that was interested, and came close, didn't materialize. But this was the actual submissions to the
Oh, cool.
syndicates, what you're looking at.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's so funny. I got to tell you, Barbara, it's been so long since I've looked at this. Again, a long time ago. It's almost as if I had foresight on the future, because the main character named Wellington, side note, my legal name is something else, and it's a not common name. Steve is
Okay.
easy to remember for everybody, so I just use it. So Wellington, not a common name, and that character is me in a way. Later in life, I started working, and this is after, I started even drawing this. I worked with a Rick. And then years later, I met a TJ. That's another character. And
Ah,
the Tina on the end, that was just a name. I'm very much connected to a Tina. In fact, I'll have dinner at her house tonight. It's
oh,
like, what are the
how about that?
chances of that?
What are
Bizarre.
the chances? Yeah.
Hmm.
I think there's a whole level of knowing that we're not aware of how we receive it, but we're receiving
Yeah.
information all the time. Yeah.
Yep.
I think it's pretty cool.
Hmm.
So I can see a pattern in how you chose to draw the figures. They have nice round bulbous noses,
Hmm.
prominent chins, lots of room for expression in the mouth, um, kind of legs that are skinny at the top and widen out to the bottom. So they look pretty stable. It's kind of like the base of a tree trunk, how it widens toward the ground.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so even if they're, gesturing in some way, they're not going to fall over. And their feet go forward and backward. I mean, you've got some bulge at the heel as well as the toe, and that also kind of contributes to that stability.
Hmm.
And what one of the things that I've always enjoyed about comic strips is the freedom to exaggerate or distort. So you've given each hand three fingers and occasionally you show a thumb.
I don't know
I
if that
know,
comes from Disney or what.
well, it gets the point across. Really, I mean,
Hmm.
if you think about it, our pinky is it's sort of little and extraneous. We don't do much with it. It's sort of like an adjunct finger. You
Hmm.
could think of it that way. Anyway, let's look at the first strip. So these are the characters. Rick looks like a another student.
Yep.
This guy might be the custodial person,
He's
mechanic.
actually he's not, but he's kind of a offbeat character who has sunglasses on. You never see his eyes. He never speaks either, and he's very smart and crafty, even though some may view him as just being a train wreck. And his visual there is actually teacher I had, that didn't just the look of him with the glasses and the beard and everything. That was a
Uh-huh.
teacher I had. So I took that look and then translated into that character.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, I can definitely see the reference to kind of working with the hands and the distinctive appearance that shows that he's not really into following trends.
Right, right. And he's a motorhead, likes working on cars.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah. My grandson is heading into that. He's about to graduate from high school, and boy, that means everything to him. Cars, automobiles. So going to be interesting to see what he brings, what creativity he brings to that. And then Mr. McNutt
Hmm.
obviously represents all the kind of teachers who have attitude that you'd prefer they didn't have.
Pretty much. Yeah. Or the students think they're smarter than the teacher.
Oh, yes. Yeah, and once in a while they actually are. There's usually a legend in each class about somebody who could just talk circles around the math teacher or the
Hmm.
English teacher. Yeah.
Yep.
And then there's Tina, who looks like she has those little rollers under her shoes.
That was big back then, roller skating. So,
Yeah,
yeah. And she, is very friendly with Wellington in the storyline. Yeah, but she's, everybody's friend. They all hang out together. Um, yeah, and then her personality not fully defined at this point.
yeah, yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And she's just sort of a friend to hang out with in the gang.
Hmm.
Okay, so this one really kind of replayed itself for me several times. Here's the guy in charge,
Yep.
knowing that somebody's going to be late,
Again.
counting down again. So it's habitual, and then right through the wall comes Wellington.
Yeah, he just drives a car through the wall just before a second before he's technically going to be late, and just the look on his face is like, "Yeah, I got you again. Don't worry about it."
Right. I could relate to that from my history of ADD, which somehow makes time almost impossible for me to manage well. Time is always getting away from me, especially in terms of getting to an appointment, because
Mm,
somehow or other I never count the amount of time it's going to take me to get from my kitchen into the driver's seat with the car in reverse, actually starting the trip. And the
yep.
same on the other end. Anyway, I just could so relate to that urgency. And
And,
that,
and also proving somebody wrong.
oh,
You know?
yes. Oh, absolutely. Doing whatever it takes to get there and then getting to say, aha, I
You
did
know,
it.
the one thing I see, even looking at this, was the use of the contrast. I was always
Yes.
big on, a good balance of blacks to whites, in terms of, and then some shading here and there too.
And this one is another great example of that. Because look at this, you've got the texture of the bark on the tree. You even got a little sort of a little,
Knot, I think it's a knot, right, in
a
the tree.
knot or a squirrel hole in the tree, and then
Yeah,
you've got some branches showing up in the openings of the leaves, and then this clump as the whole pile falls off the tree. Yep. And that little sort of ironic, this life. You have a
hmm,
question, it's going to get answered, maybe not in the way you want, but
right.
there it is. Yeah.
I have to tell you, looking at these, and I'm always very humble, and I never say this, but I'm going to say, like, I look at these and I'm like, they weren't that bad. They're actually pretty good in
I,
terms of,
I
you
I
know,
totally agree. Yeah. And I like the way that you allow yourself not to define absolutely everything. And to kind of use this center panel is an example. You left the square open
mm.
and you don't close the square, over the thought bubbles.
Just
Um,
and that's only because I get bored sometimes. I want to look at it a different way. I will tell you though, the medium here is pen and ink. This wasn't marker. This was actually pen and ink.
oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, which you get more
Yeah.
detail from.
Right, right. But which can also be a little more unforgiving.
If you saw how many pieces of paper were in the garbage, but that was also the perfectionism part of me at the same time. But yeah, yeah, that was the biggest challenge I had in drawing, because I was never satisfied with it.
Well, and to sort of give you some credit there, comic strips demand a certain regularity so that you can recognize the characters. So you really do have to establish a level of consistency in how you're showing the characters that
Hmm.
I don't think I would be able to pull off. But again, you had years of practicing when it was just something fun to do, and I think you may have just gotten good at it from repetition.
Yeah, yeah, rinse and repeat. And I will share. I've mentioned it briefly before. I was bullied as a kid. My parents got divorced when I was very young. Yeah, I had a lot of stuff going on in childhood. And only through you did I realize when I started drawing, like 7 years old, 9, 10, 11, 12, that was my therapy. I didn't realize it until we met. That I was because I would look forward to going into the basement and putting some music on and sketching things out and drawing things. And oh my gosh, that day, when you go to get a new pen or a new bottle of ink or a new type of pad, that was a high point.
How did you think of storylines? I mean, each one of these is a little short narrative, but there's a beginning, a reference to a middle, at least even in this one that's only two squares. There's a whole implied middle to the situation, and then the end.
Um, I guess character definement because that teacher, the students would always, try to razz him, or prove that they were smarter, as in this one where there he is in the auditorium, the janitor's saying, "Everybody's gone. Why are you still here?" And his hands are on the podium, the teacher. And in the thought bubble, he's saying, "Well, I wouldn't be here, but somebody super glued the top of the podium. I can't move."
Right.
Like, they pulled a prank on him. That teacher is Mr. Botkin, which was a social studies teacher. Didn't look like that, but we would do things just to do, maybe not this, but just things just to have fun. And he would take it all in stride. This teacher just has kind of a snarly look on his face that I got taken for a ride again. But that teacher, he would walk in and I would draw a different caricature of him on the board, the chalkboard every day. And he turned
Oh,
in like
that's
in a different situation. Like if we were
awesome.
studying, Renaissance time, there would be a picture of him, dressed like that.
Oh,
Just,
how cool. That's
yeah,
that's so fun. Yeah.
kind of lighten up the class a little bit.
It's great to have a teacher like that. There was a social studies teacher like that in my high school, Dave Lemon. And I mean, he would let you dress up and act out a play about the Renaissance or about Lincoln and abolitionists and, whatever the topic was in history class. He was just really ready to go with the flow in a way that a lot of teachers were not. And I think, a
Mm.
lot of kids that had his classes really appreciated what he was open to.
You never forget them, right?
You really don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really
Yeah.
don't.
They make a mark on us.
Right. Oh, here's a good one.
So now we have the one character, Rick, talking to Tina, and he's talking about how much time she's spending with a foreign exchange student, a Chinese foreign exchange student. And he's, saying, "Well, you guys are always together. What do you have to say for yourself?" And then she speaks back in Chinese. Now,
In Chinese.
that's not a real Chinese, but I wanted to play with the pen and see if I could make it look like Chinese characters. So,
Absolutely. Point came across quite clearly.
yeah. Just that,
That's right.
basically just having fun with it. But I always love texture, like the bricks on the wall, um, the clothing, adding
Yeah,
texture to it.
yeah.
Yeah.
The little part of an exit sign up there, the bricks around the doorway. See, the little kind of vents in the locker,
Oh, I didn't even see that. Look at that.
and that little shelf on top, where you stowed things above the place where you could hang your coat. I mean, all those things, just trigger the real environment so well, and that you just allow yourself to just put a little hint in
There
the
were
in.
some other cartoonists that I was inspired by. So that's where I got sort of I would study them, how they did it. I used to even back in the day, even write to cartoonists, and some of them would send me originals, which,
Awesome.
some did, like Charles Schultz Peanuts. He never did. I get it. What are you going to do? Most people are going to sell it. Not me. I put it in a frame, put it on the wall, but I would study it for hours, how they did it, how,
Oh, I
ah,
bet.
how they made a
Yeah.
correction, the
Yeah.
technique.
Yeah. And that is a really important point. Most artists at some point, if not all the time, are working from the work of other artists,
Hmm.
working to kind of learn how they did it, how they see something, how they represent something, and then
Yep.
finding what you can borrow that you can put to use, but in your own way.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Borrow, inspired by, not copying. You know, never. I wouldn't say I ever
Right.
copied, but just how does somebody draw this? How do you draw that? Oh, look at that. It's almost like going to school when you study other works of art.
Yeah, I think it really is. I think you're sort of harvesting information that is there in the visual format.
So I don't want to run out of time with me. Uh,
Okay.
so show me
Well,
you.
so here's mine. I did this, in my early 20s. We had a
You know what?
little,
Same age as me. What we're talking. Wow, how interesting.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
isn't that funny? And we had lived in a duplex for a while. We had the upper level, and the landlord had the lower level, and he was kind of into gardening. And this was what I could see from one of the windows that looked out on the side of the house.
I love the dramatic shadow coming off the trees. Like you truly feel the time of day, and that makes me feel like I'm there. And it's very dramatic shadows, but it works I wouldn't do it because I don't want to say I'd be afraid, but I would think, it's over the top. But it's not. It just illustrates the point of the time of day and you actually being there. And in the lower center is what looks like a table and maybe something on top of the table.
Yeah, there are a couple, actually, there's a couple of boulders and then something flat on top of the boulders and a couple of pots that don't
Yeah.
have plants in them yet, but might at some point. So it's
But
sort of, I think, early spring when I did this. So
hmm,
the ground is kind of getting turned over, ready for planting. There's a few sticks that show that maybe there are some seeds in the ground already. The grass is that bright, bright green of early spring. And I think this was around the time that I was really beginning to notice the color of shadow in the real world.
Oh,
I
you
mean, I'd
did in a big
I'd
way.
seen shadow represented in artwork with all kinds of color, but it was a little harder to really see when shadows have color in the world around us. And
I don't think this would have been the same, Barbara, if you added any color to the shadows. And I think that's where the dramatic effect comes from, where you could have made it a very, very dark green and it would have gotten the point across, time of day and all of that. This is so much better. And adding that, call it human touch of the bowl on top of, whatever that is, the object on the
right.
boulders adds a humanality to it and takes it out of a quote unquote landscape. There's more of a human vibe going on there. And very detailed with the grass, by the way.
Yeah, and as an art therapist looking at that now, what all those pencil strokes might be kind of classified as is something we call perseveration, which means just simply ongoing repetition.
If I said that this reminds me a little bit of a Van Gogh kind of feel to it, would you say that would you agree?
Yeah, yeah, to some extent, because I'm not really making any effort to hide the strokes of
Hmm.
the color material that are coming onto the page in the way that they are. Um,
I love it. We're out of time. I could keep going.
yeah,
Like getting in
okay.
your head, getting in my head. But this just illustrates that we all have something in us, maybe more than others, but it's all creative. Everything is art. And whether it's a cartoon or final question, what medium was that in your art?
That was actually colored pencil on some fairly dense paper. Prismacolor pencils have really good pigments in the lead.
Wow.
So even though that drawing is more than 50 years old, the photo I took of it last week. So the colors are still, they've lasted.
I would have never gotten that was colored pencils. It looks more like oil crayon or something like that. However, they don't really make them with tips that fine, as far as I know.
Yes. Yeah,
But
and
yeah.
that's what I loved about those because I could layer color on layer on layer on layer with those colored pencils and still get color, no matter how many colors were already down on the page. So that let me, explore kind of creating colors like the shadows, that was probably blue and dark blue and maybe some black and maybe some purple in there.
I see the purple, and I'm going to say maybe a touch of brown. I don't know, you know.
It could, yeah, could well be
Mm.
around the edges, especially. But anyway, yeah.
Interesting way to look at things, and this is what you do to help people bring out their creativity and what comes from that. It is therapeutic. When somebody says, I'm doing this because it's therapeutic, gardening, whatever it is. Yes, it is. It's therapeutic. Barbara, what's your website?
My website is Robertson Art Therapy LLC, all spelled out, no punctuation in between.com. And you can email me at brobertson, Robertson .atr, not art, but ATR at gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. Send me a little picture of some artwork you're doing. Let's have a conversation. Feel free to reach out.
Yeah, we want to see your creativity. And I really mean that. We masked down today and showing being vulnerable. So we'd love to, take a look at what you've got going on. Barbara, thank you again for being here today. Always love it.
It's always my pleasure. Thanks, Steve. See
Likewise.
you
We'll be right
next
back.
week.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.